Hello, my name is Melissa. I'm HealthAware's registered dietitian. Welcome. This is our Carb Smart class. Today, because it is the first Carb Smart class of the new year, I figured let's talk about carbohydrate basics, kind of an intro to carbs. I have lots of show and tell items today, so let's get to it. First of all, what are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are one of the three main nutrients found in our foods and beverages. The other two would be protein and fat. So carbs, protein, and fat make up the three main nutrients of what we eat. Today, we're obviously talking about the carbohydrates. Your body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose. Glucose is the main source of energy for your body's cells, tissues, and organs. Glucose can be used immediately, or it can be stored for later use in the liver, the muscles, and in fat. So what are the different types of carbohydrates? There are three main types of carbohydrates. First, sugars. We've heard of that before. They are also called simple carbohydrates because they are the most basic form. They can be added to foods such as sugar in candy, desserts, processed foods, and regular soda. They can also include the kinds of sugars that are found naturally in fruits and vegetables and milk. The second type of carbohydrate is starches. They are complex carbohydrates, which are made of lots of the simple sugars strung together. Your body needs to break down starches into sugars to then use them for energy. Starches include bread, like we see here, cereal, pasta. They also include certain vegetables like potatoes, right here, potatoes, peas, and corn. The third category is fiber. It is also a complex carbohydrate. Your body cannot break down most fibers, so eating foods with fiber can help you feel full and make you feel less likely to overeat. Diets that are high in fiber have other health benefits, which I know I've talked about many times in class. They can help prevent stomach or intestinal problems like constipation. They can also help lower cholesterol and help manage blood sugar. Fiber is found in many foods that come from plants, which includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, and whole grains. So now let's talk specifically, this is why I have my show and tell, which foods contain carbohydrates. There are many foods that contain carbohydrates. I would say the majority of foods contain carbohydrates, and we'll talk specifically about which foods don't contain carbohydrates as well, but let's start with those that do. So the first category is grains, and grains would be kind of this section. Grains are bread. Any kind of bread products are made from grains, so bagels, this is a breadstick. These are all fake foods, by the way, they're rubbery. Breadsticks, regular bread, English muffins, also tortillas, pita breads, all types of pasta, rice, any types of rice or other grains like oats or quinoa or barley. Also things like pretzels, snacky type of foods, popcorn, crackers, all of these things are made from grains and they are carbohydrate foods. Another category within this is then our fruits. All fruits are carbohydrates. So oranges, bananas, melons, any type of fruit contains carbohydrates. Berries as well, and then also dried fruit. So this is raisins. I don't know if you can even tell in this camera, but raisins, all the dried fruit, as well as any of the juice from fruits, all carbohydrates. Next, we have dairy products. Now, dairy and non-dairy do vary a bit within the carbohydrate spectrum. Certain types of non-dairy items like almond milk has very low carbohydrate content because it's made with almonds, which, as we'll talk about in a moment, nuts have very low carbohydrates. If sugar is added to a non-dairy milk, then it will have more carbohydrate in them. Regular dairy, that's kind of what we're talking about. Regular dairy like milk or yogurt do contain carbohydrates. That's what I meant to say. They actually contain natural sugar called lactose, and that's why they have carbohydrate in them. So any of those dairy items. Any type of beans, legumes, like black beans or lentils or refried beans, pinto beans, garbanzo beans, all of the beans have carbohydrate in them as well. Snack foods, which we already kind of covered, like crackers, pretzels, popcorn, all contain carbohydrate food. There's going to be some variation with snacks, of course, because snacks is a pretty broad category. But anything that is also in the dessert realm, over here we've got our cookies, we have a brownie, ice cream, cake. These all contain carbohydrates as well. The amounts are going to vary for those types of foods, especially based on what ingredients are part of the recipe, but in general, desserts, carbohydrate foods. As I mentioned before, juices are carbohydrate foods, regular soda, any types of sports drinks or energy drinks are going to have carbohydrates in them if they do contain sugar. Then the last category, actually, starchy vegetables, which I did mention a little bit ago in that starch category. Starchy vegetables would be potatoes, peas, and corn. Sweet potatoes fall into this category as well. Those are all carbohydrate foods. And I also wanted to mention over here, we have some of the more, I don't know if I'd call them fast foods, but maybe more of the processed versions of foods. Pizza, tacos, French fries. These types of foods all contain carbohydrates. French fries are made from potatoes, of course. Tacos have a shell or a tortilla, which is made from grains, which is a carbohydrate. And of course, pizza has the bread, which is made from grains, which is a carbohydrate. So as you can see, tons of foods that we eat contain carbohydrate. Now let's talk about some of the foods briefly that don't contain carbohydrate or contain very, very little carbohydrate. So most meats, actually all meats, regular meats, are going to contain probably no carbohydrate, depending on the processing of it. But plain, hamburger, roast beef, I think that's what this is supposed to be, some sort of beef. Meat does not contain carbohydrate, at least in any amounts that are going to be notable. Fish, that's what this is, it's a white fish. Fish does not contain carbohydrate. Poultry, this is chicken, does not contain carbohydrate either. Certain types of cheeses actually don't contain carbohydrate. You'll have to look at the label for the cheese or the nutrition facts label to find out how much carbohydrate are in certain types of cheeses, but there definitely are cheeses that are very, very low in carbohydrate. Nuts. Most nuts, these are walnuts. Most nuts contain a tiny amount of carbohydrate because they are a plant food, but they contain very low amounts of carbohydrate. So most nuts are in that category. Eggs, should mention eggs along with that poultry category. No carbohydrate in eggs or egg whites. And then oils and butter. So those fats that, oils and butter are the fats that contain pretty much, actually really zero carbohydrate. The way that they're processed, there is no carbohydrate in the fats. Pretty much all fat in butter and oil. Excuse me. One I want to mention in that fat realm, avocados. So avocados are primarily fat, but because they are from a plant, they do contain small amounts of carbohydrate as well. So hopefully that gives you a decent rundown on the carbohydrate foods and the non-carbohydrate foods. And I know you can't see those non-carbohydrate foods off the screen. So which type of carbohydrates out of all we've talked about should you eat? You do need to eat some amount of carbohydrate to give your body energy, but it's important to eat the right kind of carbohydrates for your health. When eating grains, that was kind of this category here, when eating grains, you want to choose mostly whole grains and not the refined grains. So whole grains are foods like whole wheat bread, that's what this one is, it's a little darker in color, whole wheat breads or English muffins, brown rice, that's what this one is, whole cornmeal and oatmeal, that's one of my favorite carbohydrates, oatmeal. Those whole grains offer lots of nutrients that your body needs, like vitamins, minerals, and fiber. To figure out whether a product has a lot of whole grain, check the ingredients list on the package to see if whole grain is one of the first few ingredients listed. Ideally, you want it to be the first ingredient listed with things like breads. Refined grains are those that have had some of the grain removed. So this also removes some of the nutrients that are good for your health. So things like a white pita pocket or a white flour tortilla or regular white pasta, that would be into the refined grain food category. And a lot of those refined grains, they remove all the nutrients, the minerals and vitamins and fiber, and then they put some of those vitamins back in when you could just get the whole thing, which has more nutrients in it. So along the lines of that, fiber. We want to eat foods that contain fiber. The nutrition facts label on the back of food packages will tell you how much fiber a product has. In general, anything that is from a plant, so the grains, fruits, vegetables, those are going to contain fiber. Within that grain category, like I just said, those that are whole grains are going to contain fiber. The ones that are refined grains may or may not, depending on if they've added back in some kind of ingredient that has fiber. And finally, we want to try to avoid foods that have a lot of added sugar. These foods can have many calories, but not much nutrition. Eating too much added sugar raises your blood sugar and can make you gain weight and have other type of health implications. You can tell if a food or beverage has added sugars by looking at the nutrition facts label on the back of a food package. It tells you how much total sugar the food has, as well as the added sugar that's in that food or beverage. Not every label is going to have the added sugar listed, but I believe it's now supposed to be part of the nutrition labels. So that process is kind of going to transition all food package labels to have the added sugars on it. Something I get asked a lot, how many carbohydrates should you eat? There is no really one size fits all amount of carbohydrates that people should eat. Unfortunately, wouldn't that be easy? The amount can vary depending on many factors like age, gender, health, exercise, whether or not you're trying to lose weight or gain weight. On average, though, the recommendation is to get between 45 and 65% of your calories for the day from carbohydrates. So on a nutrition facts label, you'll also see the daily value listed on the, I think it's the right, the right side, whichever side is in my camera. The right column on the nutrition facts label lists the daily value. And that's based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet. And the total carbohydrates for that then is 275 grams per day. Your amount of carbohydrates that you need might be higher or lower, depending on your calorie needs, your health, all those factors we just talked about. In general though, 45 to 65% of your daily calories should come from carbohydrates. And that is a decently broad amount of carbohydrates. So if you need help kind of narrowing that down, figuring that out, let me know. We can make an appointment and we can kind of figure that out together. But in general, 45 to 65%. Finally, I just wanted to address something that's been popular for the last few years, low carb diets. Is it safe to eat a low carb diet, also called a keto diet is what people often refer to it as? Some people go on a low carb diet to try to lose weight. That's kind of the most popular reason to do it. This usually means eating a very low amount of carbohydrates, sometimes as low as 20 grams. Somewhere in that 20 to 150 gram carbohydrate range is sort of a low carbohydrate diet. This kind of diet can be safe depending on what your health conditions are, but if you're going to be doing a low carb diet, I do recommend contacting a medical provider, dietitian, to make sure that you have enough of the proper nutrition along with that. But in general, I don't recommend really low carb diets. If you're trying to manage blood sugar for diabetes, a carbohydrate managed diet is a good idea, but a low carbohydrate diet is generally not recommended for every person. One problem with the low carb diets is that they can limit the amount of fiber that you get each day because, as I mentioned, plant type of foods are where we get fiber from primarily, and those plant type of foods all contain carbohydrates. A low carb diet can also be very difficult to sustain for a long amount of time. It's not something that you do long term. A low carb diet is a short term type of thing, which isn't really helping set you up for a lifetime of healthy eating. So low carbohydrate diets, not my favorite. There are specific people that they can be beneficial for, but for the general population, especially weight loss, not necessarily my favorite way of going about it. That's all I've got for you today. Lots of carbohydrate information. I hope you learned something, found one little tidbit to remember from the class today. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments, and I will see you next time. Bye.